Structures outlive their importance, and when they do, a demolition is necessary. Urbanization has swept through many cities, and in a bid to regenerate the town, the authorities fish out dilapidated buildings and convert it to something more palatable. You'll find these 10 structure demolitions interesting because of the circumstances behind them. Number 10. A 53-meter-high silo. A cultural center and library in Denmark were victims of a failed demolition after a 53-meter-high silo toppled the wrong way. Initial videos released on the internet showed a crowd of excited spectators cheering the detonation like they've waited their whole life for it. In a matter of minutes, the cheers turned to tears as the tower crushed the cultural center. Thankfully, no one was injured in the rubble. The Danish Explosives Association said they had made every preparation to ensure that the silo fell the right way. It had taken them a week to study the building and make all the necessary arrangements for the fall, but this unfortunate incident happened. Volunteer firefighters trooped into the center, which houses a library and a music school, to ensure that the damage doesn't go overboard. Everything in the library was covered in dust, although some of the building's interior remained intact. The tower had stood at Vordingborg for 36 years and was demolished to make room for new businesses and a hotel. Number 9. East Hills High-Rise in Pittsburgh. Demolishing the East Hills high-rise wasn't as easy as planned. I mean, an explosive was supposed to save them all the stress, but it didn't come through for them that easy. A few hundred people stood at a corner and counted down to the final 10 seconds of the 34-year-old 14-story building. But after the dust disappeared, their hopes shattered. Half of the building on Bracy Drive remained standing, making the curious crowd burst into laughter. Herman Ward lived on the 13th floor of the building for 12 years and was among those watching the demolition. He was disappointed at the partial fall and wished that all his bad memories went up in dust all at once. It only took a second blast for the entire building to crumble to the floor. Number 8. High-rise in Turkey. If you live beside an old high-rise building, the chances are that it may be demolished soon and you'll be asked to evacuate. It is only wise that you obey the instructions of the experts. The demolition of this old structure in Turkey would have resulted in a tragedy, only that luck played in. Rather than crumble to the ground, it toppled onto its side and rolled onto its roof. It was scary because this tower is close to flats housing dozens of residents at home as of the time of the demolition. This former flour factory came to a halt, leaving dust clouds, but there was no report of casualties. Amazingly, this building, constructed in 1928, was still standing, even though upside down. Contractors wanted to reduce the 25-meter-tall building to rubble to make room for a shopping center since it has overstayed its usefulness. An eyewitness said that the building tumbled like a matchbox, but had the wall not prevented it, it would have resulted in a disaster. Number 7. Mad River Power Plant in Springfield, Ohio. The planned demolition of the Mad River Power Plant's 275-foot stack in Ohio went crazy as it came crashing down in the wrong direction. The experts who undertook the controlled blast said the tower ought to have fallen towards the east, but instead it crashed towards the southeast. It fell on two 12,500-volt power lines and backup power generators. More than 25 people immediately fled the scene to avoid the falling power lines. The signs were clear early enough to give way for the fall. The botched demolition caused over 4,000 customers on the west side of Springfield to lose power for over 2 houses while traffic lights were off. After the first failed attempt, the crews detonated the explosives correctly, but another undetected crack caused it to fall backwards. Well, everyone agrees that property was damaged, but all lives were intact. Fortunately, none of the debris made its way to the Mad River or nearby railway tracks. Number 6. Wrong home demolished in Fort Worth, Texas. Jeremy Wenninger's good friend lived in the pink house until she passed away in 2019, and he became the legal owner. Although he lives in Los Angeles, he had hopes of renovating the property before something unexpected happened. The nearly 100-year-old Dallas home was demolished by mistake while Jeremy was out there in Los Angeles. According to the company that conducted the demolition, the house was confused with another, which was a block away. Neighbors say they were powerless when they saw the bulldozer around the home and couldn't utter a word. Their former neighbor cherished the building, and they wondered why anyone would want to reduce it to rubble. A neighbor even claimed that the older woman had pleaded with him to preserve her house because it was a unique home. When Jeremy found out about the illegal demolition, he asked questions only to realize the company had taken down the wrong property. They eventually agreed on monetary compensation, but no amount would make up for the memories the house brings. Number 5. Botched demolition in downtown Vancouver. Planned demolition in downtown Vancouver toppled 2 separate walls onto busy streets, but no one was injured. The edifice used to be the William Davis Center for Acting, but was demolished at the corners of Hornby and Helmkin Streets when the north wall collapsed into the street. Hundreds of pounds of rubble made its way to the road, and shooting clouds of dust rent the air. Seconds later, a second wall fell and almost hit a person standing on the road. The city of Vancouver fined the developer of the demolition company up to $519,000 while investigating the remote causes of the incident. The site was shut down and the authorities asked that they stop construction. The company hired to tear down the building declined to comment on the issue. The property is supposed to be used for high-end Hornby residences. Damage control in this case is almost impossible, and video footage of the incident already went viral within a blink of an eye. Number 4. Failed demolition in Nuzhou, China. This clip shows a 22-floor residential building demolished in Nuzhou, southern China. Disaster is narrowly averted when the building suddenly develops a mind of its own. Instead of crumbling into a contained heap of rubble, half of the building crashed sideways to the ground, thereby avoiding a disaster. What became more shocking was that the other half of the building is left standing, but leaning precariously to the side. Onlookers screamed after the first blast, but didn't know there was much more to it until they saw the twist. Experts said that the demolition failed due to technical reasons. They had wanted to break it into 2 parts, but I guess the structure had a mind of its own. The building was eventually destroyed to make room for other real estate projects. As for the second half of the building that caused a scare, it was demolished by a crane. Number 3. The Pontiac Silverdome demolition. For several years, the Pontiac Silverdome has been one of America's most famous ruins. This site once hosted the Pope, World Cup, and Super Bowl. Since it has outlived its usefulness, it was time for the 80,000 capacity arena to be reduced to nothing. Experts began with a partial implosion that was supposed to bring down the structure's upper section, with the first part of the process expected to last up to a year. When the explosive detonated, there were only a few puffs of smoke, and nothing else happened. The demolition company said 10% of the charges failed to go off, and a building that should have fallen stood firm. The Silverdome moved from being one of the world's best sporting venues to becoming a symbol of the decline of Southeast Michigan. Photographs of the decaying structure became famous around the globe and were used to represent post-apocalyptic wasteland. It took a second explosion for the Silverdome to cooperate, and onlookers had a swell time filming and taking photos. And now for our best pick. A subscriber came across this video while surfing the net. Since he couldn't make meaning out of it, he sent it to us for clarification. As always, we accepted it and featured it in this video. Like him, if you find something confusing, send it to us and we'll do justice to it. Number 2. Scotland Red Road Flats. The Red Road Towers used to be the tallest residential building in Europe when it was built in the 1960s. Unfortunately, the Glasgow Housing Association ordered it demolished as part of its plans to regenerate the city. About 2,500 residents were moved to another location before the blowdown. The operation, however, didn't go as planned, as one of the 2 towers was partially standing. The company in charge of the building said that they might have underestimated the robustness of the building, and this isn't far from the truth. Reports say that unlike most of the other UK towers built at the time, this one was constructed using steel. Even though steel-rammed residential structures were uncommon, the engineers managed to use the best material. Unlike concrete structures, steel frames do not crush easily, except the impact is massive. SafeDem, the company in charge, noticed several discrepancies between the surveyed buildings and the design drawings and concluded that the engineers followed good practice. Following the failure of the first trial, the towers were brought down using high-reach machinery. Number 1. Las Vegas Clarion. An elevator shaft withstood more than a 2-ton explosive punch meant to implode a Las Vegas hotel. Most of the 12-story casino hotel crumbled in the demolition, designed to clear the site off the strip and near the Las Vegas Convention Center for new construction. Despite the force of the 4,400-pound explosives, the elevator just dropped about 4 stories and tilted to one side. The implosion was delayed for more than an hour as some pedestrians made their way inside the blast zone but were shooed away. Guests watched from the Las Vegas Convention Center's gold parking lot across the street. After the elevator refused to go down, experts considered using a wrecking ball to finish the rest of the work. The 200-room casino hotel opened in 1970 as the Royal Inn and was called the Debbie Reynolds by its one-time owner. It's been ages since controlled explosives toppled a casino hotel. Between 2004 and 2007, 6 Vegas properties were brought down. And there you have it. These 10 structure demolitions didn't go as planned. Please feel free to tell us about a botched demolition experience you've witnessed.